Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Donna Chow, and I'm your host and your moderator for today's class. Here at eLotus, we have been hosting educational courses for over 2 decades, and we are so proud to be your trusted source for premium CEU content with over 200 speakers, 700 courses, and 3,000 hours of continuing educations. We are back for another series of acupuncture point combinations with David Hartman. Today's webinar is Numerology and Acupuncture Point Combinations, Archetypes, and Life Paths. This is the first of a 4-course series on numerology and acupuncture point combinations. To get the full benefit of the complete series, register for the upcoming live webinars or purchase the video recordings at a later time. Both options do include CEUs. And even better, I recommend the Gold Pass membership, which allows you to see all of them for free, as well as receive unlimited CEUs and free herbs. After we begin, I will post a link where you can learn more about this. It is, in fact, your ticket to the practice of your dreams. And before we begin, let's go over a few items to familiarize you with our webinars and how they work. Today's webinar will be from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. We will have 4 breaks, and David will let you know when those are. Lunch is scheduled from about 1 to 2 p.m. And for lecture notes, you can download them directly from the Blue Course Access page in your eLotus account. To use the webinar chat room, set your chat preference to everyone so that everyone can see what you're typing and be part of the conversation. To ask the speaker a question, enter your question into the Q&A box, and if time allows, the speaker will respond to them. And finally, the quiz and the video replay, you'll be notified by email tomorrow once they are available. Our speaker today is David Hartman, and he is a licensed Chinese medicine practitioner from Brisbane, Australia, who has been in practice since 1997. David is well known for his signature acupuncture point combinations, on which he has also authored a textbook. David has given presentations at conferences and seminars all over the world, and he is also researching and learning new things in the field of Chinese medicine and has a wealth of experience in the field. Through eLotus, David has taught classes on the 5 spirits, emotions, and mental well-being, as well as the 5-element archetypes and 5 spirits acupuncture, which are all available now for purchase as distant learning CEU video courses. When I get back to my computer, I'll go ahead and post the link for you guys. It is truly an honor and privilege to have David with us today. So without further ado, David, please take over and share your PowerPoint.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, eLotus. I hope you can all hear me okay. I noticed in the Q&A it's saying that the chat bit's disabled, so I'm sure that eLotus will get onto that. What an honor, an opportunity. This has been quite a journey getting to this point. Numerology has been something that has been in my life since I can ever remember. I can remember being a young kid. I'm 48 years old, being a young kid and looking at what mum and dad had on the bookshelf. And I can always remember there being like numerology books amongst other things sitting there. And I never really paid much attention, I guess, to it, but until I guess you get drawn to things, don't you? And that's what happened with me. I think I was about 17 or 18, and I finally, after probably glancing the books 100 times, and then I finally pulled a numerology book out and started to have a look at it. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey for me from that point forward. So really, what am I, as I said, 48, so about 18, so 30 odd years, even longer than I've been an acupuncturist. So it's just been something that, as I said, has always been of interest to me, but the fact that I've been able to incorporate that into Chinese medicine as well has been such a thrill. And for eLotus to give me the opportunity to do that officially, rather than it be this unofficial collection of interesting notes on my computer, that I can get it out there to people as well. So I just wanted to also point out that I want you to spend this time. So if you're here with me and eLotus today, or you're here for the whole of this 4-day journey, or bits and pieces of, I want you to learn about you, but the opportunity is actually that you learn about a whole bunch of people. So part of, I guess, if you learn about yourself, is that there'll be certain parts of each day that you really resonate towards, because it's your number, or it's your arrow, or your personal year, or whatever it is. But I really kind of hope that you'll have about half a dozen or so different pieces of paper with your name and other people's names and their dates of birth, and that as we go through today and onwards, that you start to fill up those bits of paper with the information, so that you're more actively engaged in the course itself, because you can learn about you really well, but you can also learn about your friends, your family. Maybe you've got some really interesting patients and you know their dates of birth, of course, so you could be using them as on the bits of paper as well. So please, to get the best value out of this workshop for however long you're with us, I would recommend that you, in each break, if you haven't done so already, we'll be giving you cues. So this break's coming up, for example, this is what I'd like you to do while you're grabbing yourself a cup of coffee or whatever. So you essentially use this workshop to learn a lot about you, but a lot about friends, family, patients, or whoever that is that you want to learn more about. So that's kind of also something I wanted to mention as well before we got into it. So let me get my slides up. Okay. So a little quote to start with. Numerous tools of insight from both psychological and mystical traditions have emerged at different times and in different cultures. All of these methods and maps of consciousness represent our attempts to demonstrate that our universe and our individual psyche aren't random or chaotic and have a certain structure and order. Dan Millman's been another gentleman that's had a lot of books in our house as well over the years, the Secret Warrior books, and his book that I have is this one on numerology. It's in the references later on. There is an older version. This was the more recent one that I've now started to smash, and I've got lots of highlighted bits throughout. That's how I use my books. And so part of this course is using some of what Dan Millman has used in his, I guess you'd call it, numerology book. So Donna already gave a quick sneak peek into me. I guess for those of you that were not part of the eLotus online series earlier this year, you might not know much about who I am. So just very quickly, I started studying Chinese medicine nearly straight out of school, which is quite unusual in Australia. Usually it's a middle-age kind of career. And I should know because I've been teaching acupuncture since 2000. So it was unusual to have me as a student, as a fresh out of school person. So it means that I guess I'm going to say I'm only 48. I know my kids wouldn't say that. They'd call me an old fella. But it means that even though I'm only 48, I've actually been doing acupuncture for nearly 30 years. So it seems bizarre. It's been a wonderful ride. and I'm always going to learn and grow as a person. And that's what's been fun about this workshop, is the opportunity to really embrace Chinese medicine by using, I guess, a Western archetype system. So I really hope you do enjoy this workshop for however long that you're part of it with us. I got a master's degree in 2009. As I said, I've been lecturing since 2000. I'm currently the module leader for the Chinese classics subject for the online master's degree with a college in England, actually, in York in England. And that's been a lot of fun. And that's been another opportunity to continue to use something that I'm passionate about, you know, bringing the Chinese classics into modern clinical practice. It is something that I want to explore further in terms of workshops. So that's possibly something that Elotus and I will do something about in the coming years. We'll see how we go. 2 books. The Acupuncture Point Combination book, you can see, is quite a substantial book, and part of the workshop is in this, but only a very small part. And it's designed really to get you thinking more about the treatments that you do. And then the other one is the Acupoint Dictionary. This one is, it gives you the treatments. So you just look up at disorder down the side, A to Z, and then you look across and it's got the treatments for you. So one encourages you to look more at what you do in terms of structuring your treatment, and the other book is just giving it to you. So it's kind of coming at it from 2 different angles, but no less valuable, I guess, in terms of what they can give you. Done lots of national Chinese medicine and tuning fork workshops, and lots of international as well, going to different colleges and universities around the world and presenting. And I've done quite a bit with Elotus as well over the last few years. And as I said, that ongoing interest in numerology since I was a teenager. For those of you that are putting question and answers in, and the chat's working, I will have a little look at that before each of the breaks. There'll be about a 10 to 15 minute break every hour and 15 or so, separate to the lunch, just for us to, I guess, stretch our legs and grab a coffee. I'll be probably smashing the coffees a bit today because it's 2:12 a.m. for me. So yeah, I might be needing a few little coffees to keep me charging. All right, so how's the structure across the 4 days if you're planning on attending some or all of it? So you can see here today we go through the first bit today is we're going to look at acupuncture point combinations, so that across the 4 days you've got a much better understanding about how the treatments are structured. We look at a bit of the history of numerology, and then we look at the ruling numbers today. And that's where, as I said, the value will be in you ensuring that you have a bunch of other dates of birth. So if you haven't really started to look at other people's dates of birth, you've got plenty of time before we really need to start to gather that. So at each break, you might take that opportunity to get different people's dates of birth so you can learn more about them. And then we go through each of the ruling numbers throughout the rest of today. Then tomorrow, we're going to go through the first half of the day. I'll be looking at the personal year numbers. And then the second half of the day, I'll be looking at arrows. Not everyone will have an arrow, and some of you might even have up to 4 arrows. And again, the opportunity to learn is to take the people that you are going to use today into tomorrow as well. So that's why I'm saying get a blank sheet of paper and get a name and a date of birth across the top, and then you work out and fill up with different people's information. That would be sort of how I would do it if I was a participant. And then if you do come back in a month's time, this could very well be live in Los Angeles as well as recorded. We're still working on the logistics of that, but either way, it's certainly available in this same kind of setting. We have a quick look at the 27 Club. It may be more a handout that you're given as an additional document. I'm still structuring these workshops actually, but we'll see how we go. And then we look at the 5 element archetypes and how that merges in with numerology as well. And then lots of treatments. So the design there is that your 5 element archetype, say you're a fire archetype, you look to see how that matches your numerology ruling number, because that will then further refine how you operate in your world. Because the reality is that there's billions of people on the planet. And if you look at numerology, it's potentially 9 different personalities across those billions of people. And in 5 element archetypes, it's only 5. So if you know your 5 element archetype and you know your ruling number, and perhaps even your Chinese astrological animal and element, you can start to merge these to get a better sense of who you are as a person. Because when you look at your numbers later today, you might go, oh yeah, I'm at least half of that, but really there's a bit of it there that's not me at all. And that's because you are a part of that number, but you're not necessarily the whole of the number. And then some of you are going to go, that is me to an absolute T. Like when I look at the number 5 ruling number, which is my brother's number, pretty much everything there is him. It's like you could put a ruling number 5 and then a photo of my brother side by side with him waving with a smile, and it's like that's him. But then my wife is also a 5, and she'd only be probably half of what's written there. So it's very much looking at it as being that it's a part of what defines you, but it's not entirely you. And then the 4th day is looking at the 5 spirits, and again, how that merges into numerology. So the design of those is that you'll look at each of the element archetypes with the ruling number, the personal year number, the arrows, and then the 5 spirits, same thing with the ruling numbers, the personal year numbers, and the arrows. So across the 4 days, if you're doing the whole thing, you ultimately get a much bigger picture of you, because, you know, why not explore you more? We spend so much time exploring our patients' minds and their bodies and you're so keen to want to heal them. We're not always keen on necessarily healing ourselves, not just healing our bodies, but healing our brains or our minds as well. You can go back to the original philosophers of Eastern and Western thinking, and they talked about this idea that we don't spend enough time learning more about our souls, our spirits. And that's something that I think is really important. So give yourself permission across the 1, 2, 3, 4 days to learn more about yourself, your inner workings. That's what's exciting. Now, because as I said, it's 2 in the morning for me, I thought we'd have a little bit of an Aussie quiz to get ourselves a bit loosened up and a bit relaxed. And so this is where we jump into the chat room. So for those of you that perhaps aren't Australian, you might want to have a little look at this. Let's just go through them one at a time. So in the chat, do you know what is Australia? So what's Australia? Do you know what that is in terms of Australian slang? No idea. Short for Australia? Yeah, so Australia is a shortened version of Australia, because, you know, who wants to say the whole thing properly? So Australia is an abbreviated version of Australia. Thank you. What is a thong? A flip-flop? Small undies. It is in some cultures, Carmen. Flip-flops, yeah. Thongs are flip-flops, kind of like sandals. Jandals, they call them in New Zealand, I guess. That's not entirely right either. Flip-flops is fine. Thank you. What's a dunny? A car? Someone from down under. A donkey? Dwayne, yeah, toilet. A dunny is a toilet. I love your answers. Thank you. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Face pump, yes. The water closet, the loo, yes, thank you. Something done, that's very clever. Yes, but yes, a dunny is a toilet. What about a ticker? What's a ticker? A watch. A ticker is your watch, but a ticker is your heart. Indian food, ticks. Love the answers. A tick is a heart. Thank you. What's a Sheila? A woman, a lady, yeah. A girl. Yep. Probably got to be careful with some of these days. What is a bindi? A jewel, food item, red dot and mark between the eyes. It might be for some stuff. For some cultures, drinking too much, bindi. A man, no. No. This is, we're looking at Australian slang here. No, not a baby, not a head. A bindi is in the grass. When you tread on a bindi, you get a little, like a, what's the other words for it? A prickle. Is a prickle also Australian slang? I don't even know. A bindi is a prickle or a thank you, Dawn. A thorn in the grass when you tread on it, when you go out onto the grass and you're barefoot because you're not wearing your thongs, and you get a bindi. Yes, Kim, ouch. Thank you. What's the next one? What does it mean when you say dal? Darling. Yes. Dal, darling. How are you, Dal? Yeah, it's like saying hi. It's a form of term of endearment, I guess. Darling, Dal. How are you, Dal? But it's, yeah, very, we say it in the Hartman house quite a bit. So I might say to my wife, Amanda, how are you this morning, Dal? Or how was your day, Dal? How are you, darling? That type of, it's basically a, hey, love, how are you, love type of thing. We have, my wife was born in New Zealand. She's been in Australia most of her life, but she's got lots of cousins and uncles and aunts over in New Zealand, and they always find it so amusing when we go over there and we use this darling and dal. I think it's hysterical. You know, bloody Aussies with their weird language, and they're in New Zealand, only a few hours away. All right, what about struth and crikey? Struth, crikey. Shoot, damn, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's that type of thing. It's a way, I guess, of yeah, surprise. Oh my gosh, yes, all those things. Yeah. Yep, very good. What is I don't know if you guys have ever seen that Bluey kids cartoon show that we have in Australia. The main dog, he says biscuits when he doesn't want to swear. Biscuits when he bangs his thumb with a hammer or something like that instead of swearing. Yeah, Bluey's fantastic. All right, couple more and then we'll move into the serious stuff. What does it mean when you say catch you on the flip side? See you tomorrow, see you later. Yep. Next day, see you later. Yeah. See you next time. Very good. So we have a bit of fun with that too. Catch you on the flip side. Abby or whoever. Very good. What does it mean when someone is a stubby short of a six-pack? Not very bright, not very smart, not all there, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Idiot, yeah. All those things, yeah. So in Australia, it might be a bit like that. In other parts of the world as well, a stubby's a bottle of beer or usually. And a six-pack is usually how many of them that you get. You need to watch more Australian cinema. Perhaps, yeah, one enchilada short of a combination plate. Very good. Yes. Very good. Thank you for your contribution to the quiz. Tomorrow morning, we're going to do something a little bit different, but again, just something short to break the ice, I guess, and to learn a little bit more about different cultures, I guess. So thank you for amusing me with that. And I hope that you had a short little bit of fun with it all. And now we'll get into something a little bit more serious, but no less fun, hopefully. So what we're going to look at today is, as I said, the acupuncture point combinations primarily. A little bit more about how that works. We'll look at some examples. This is this first part of today, before the first break. So these are the questions that a lot of people ask me as online or emails or when it's live. They'll come up to me or they'll ask during the question and answer section. So what I thought I'd do is put the most commonly asked ones into a little part of today so that you go, oh, I was going to ask that question, or I didn't think of that one. That's good too. And we'll move through that first little bit before we get to the first stretch our legs break. And then again, an opportunity to ask any questions that you have as well. After that first break, we'll get into the history of numerology. We're not going to spend a lot of time. It is really interesting, but it's also about, you know, how much time do you spend on, I guess, the background of it, to potentially spend less time on the learning more about the numbers themselves, I guess. So quick bit of history on numerology, looking at what's happening in China and India around that same time of the origins of numerology. A few quick final thoughts. We're touching on nature versus nurture, but really that's only a few slides just to, I guess, review that side of things. If you did the 5-element archetype series with me earlier in the year, a few slides will be familiar, but again, we're not spending a lot of time on it. And it never hurts to be reminded of something that you just learned anyway. So, but it really is only going to be a few minutes of time there. We'll look at the numbers themselves in terms of, I guess, how you work them out. And then we'll spend time, I think it's, yes, there that we actually spend just before the break an opportunity to work out what your number is. And then in that sort of 10 to 15 minute period of time, you work out, say, half a dozen other people's numbers so that you've got a list of people that you can look at throughout the day. Then we make sure that we're kind of aware of how the structure of the whole day works from that point on. So we look at the 5-element archetypes, 5 spirits, and the ruling life path numbers. So I'm going to abbreviate the ruling life path number to RLPN, which will be at the start of every set of slides, just as a reminder, because it's so wordy. So just to abbreviate it, I just want to make sure that you understand how the acupuncture point combinations are structured for each of the ruling numbers. I call them ruling numbers. Different books call them life path numbers. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that ruling numbers and life path numbers are referring to the same thing. And then we'll actually start working through them. So number 1 and number 2 are talked about, question and answer, case studies, that sort of thing. I think after part 3 is when the lunch is scheduled. And then in the afternoon for most of you, depending on where you are in the world, of course, we will look at the ruling numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can see we're kind of dedicating around 15 minutes to 20 minutes per number. It's kind of designed around this idea that I don't want it to be just glossed over. I don't want to smash through a number where you're frantically on the edge of your seat, like, oh my goodness, he's only going to give it a couple of minutes, and it's all really happening too quickly and then we're on to the next one. And that was never the design of this workshop. That was what was great about Donna and Elotus, is that they saw a value in not making this whole 4-day workshop a 1-day workshop where everything was so quick that you never had a chance to really process and absorb it. Now, obviously, each of you are only going to be one of those numbers. So again, that's where the value of having other people as part of your list of bits of paper, so that you're more engaged throughout the day and look to see how many different people you can get different numbers for, so you can learn more about that person. And then later on, we obviously do numbers 7, 8, and 9. And then what they call master numbers that not every numerology book or website has. And then there's an issue with, if they do, which ones they have. Pretty much every single book and website I've come across are pretty happy that 11, 2, and 22, 4 are master numbers. But whether 33, 6 and 44, 8 are, is a question mark. 33, 6 is starting to become something that's a little bit more likely to be recognized as a master number, but there's still plenty of books out there and websites that don't say it is. And then 44, 8, I think, might be in the coming decades, or even in the future, like 100, 200 years down the track. Numerology's been around for 2,500 years, so it's not like things have to happen quickly. But I think that it will probably eventually become a master number, especially as we get closer to the year 4000. The value of the 44-8 will be much more important, because of the fact that every person born from 4000 through to 4999 will have at least 1 4 in their date of birth. And so these master numbers start to become much more prominent when we reach those 1,000-year cycles. So from the year 1000 AD to 1999, which of course we've only just come through, every single person born had at least 1 1 in their date of birth. So that 11-2 is valuable in the sense that there's a stacking of numbers. Now, whatever I'm saying here, if it's not making sense, we go through it today, okay? And then now from 2000 through to 2999, everyone's going to have at least 1 2 for those born from 2000 onwards. So again, the value of these colliding or stacked numbers. As I said, we'll talk about that later. So APC, which is in the slides a lot, is acupuncture point combinations. So that's something that we'll break down shortly now. Normally I spend a couple of minutes talking about it. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking about that concept. You'll see the RLPN throughout today's slides. Tomorrow there'll be a different abbreviation, but today RLPN is your ruling or life path number. It's your date of birth made into a number, and you'll learn about how to do that soon. Look, it's something that's interesting in terms of different parts of the world, how you write your date of birth, how you write dates in general, whether you write it out or whether you abbreviate it. It's not perfect, but basically I'm going to use the USA version, even though I'm from Australia, and most of the PowerPoint slides will be in Aussie English, like realizing will be with an S rather than a Z, for example. But I did want to, since this is actually part of Elotus company, that I would put the dates of birth in the USA style. So the month first, the day in the middle, and the year afterwards. But what I am doing is kind of writing it out probably different to the way maybe you would in the USA. So the 27th of July, 1986, rather than July 27, 1986. In Australia, we would actually have it written as 27/07/1986, as in the day first, the month second, the year third. So however you do it, it doesn't really matter. It's just making sure you understand how the slides are structured. But I'll be reminding you of this constantly throughout this whole series. And then there's the books that I'm using more often than not, and then some websites I will give you later. Probably the two that I've used the most consistently in terms of books themselves is the David Phillips book on numerology, but he's got lots of different editions. So this might not, if you've got a numerology book from him, because he's had so many different editions and so many different reprints, he's got different covers. But he is a no holds barred, very honest author. So he's blunt. He gives you the good with the bad. I think some numerology websites in particular tend to gloss over the negative aspects of a number and make it all sound pretty and poetic and beautiful, and don't give you the full picture. Whereas I found with David, he was very much happy to give areas that you need to work on, negative issues to work through from your number. And Dan Millman was similar, lots of really good stuff. And then again, honest when you need to be honest. I mean, the thing is that we are a collective of things that define us as a person, and not everything is necessarily all roses. And so if you know that your number can inherently mean that you are a little bit frustrated in your life, and then what's one of your key emotions? Frustration. Then suddenly it's like a light bulb moment goes off where you go, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? That makes so much sense. So that's kind of the design. And I do the same thing. I don't think that you should just get all roses. I think that you should get the good with the bad. You get the gold, but you get the dirt as well. And it's no point, human beings are flawed. So why am I going to give you an unflawed set of notes? That's not the way it works. So a bit more about the APCs as we move in here. So a little quote from probably my favorite Chinese medicine practitioner on the planet, John McDonald, Johnny Mac. There are two vital process steps with which I have seen many students struggle. The first is transforming a list of signs and symptoms and clinical observations into a traditional Chinese medicine pattern differentiation or other diagnostic conclusion. So it might be 5-element theory or whatever it is that you learnt. The second is constructing the most appropriate acupuncture point combination to address the specific health needs of the presenting patient. So Johnny Mac taught me, and now I teach people as well. For me, I agree. I think they're two of the big issues as a student going through. It's getting the signs and symptoms into a diagnosis, and then it's actually going, well, what do I do with that? So it's constructing the treatment. What's your point prescription? So for me, that was very important. I know as a student, I struggled with that. And I know as a graduate, I struggled with that. And I tended to stick to stuff that was taught to me because I was too scared to have free thinking, until a few years into my practice, I kept running into roadblocks I'd created myself, where I would go, this is the structure I need to be doing because that's what I was taught. But the patient doesn't fit that model perfectly. And I want to make changes. Oh, I can't. Why can't I? So these were issues that I worked through in my own personal clinic experience. And that's sort of how, I guess, any textbook gets built, any workshop gets built, any knowledge base gets built. Even though I'm a fire archetype in 5-element theory, I'm a water archetype support. And the water archetype is the bit that goes off and into a little cave and and learn stuff. And it's the bit that says, wow, this is gold. I need other people to see this. And that's, for me, I don't want everything that I learn personally to just be in my head or be on my computer. I want it to be out there in the world for people to learn from. And, there's going to be people that learn from me that maybe don't like the style of teaching I do, or don't like the slides, or don't like the content. They don't believe in numerology, or they don't believe in 5 archetypes, or whatever. It's fine. We can't please everyone. And some people have different ways they look at things anyway. But the fact is that more often than not, people will get value from what was in my head and what was on my computer. And that's what today is it was in my head for decades. And thanks to Donna, it's now here for you. As I said, very exciting. You'd want to be excited about something you got to get up at 2 a.m. for, wouldn't you? All right, so I've got a couple of questions for you now, not more Australia questions, but I call them acupuncture point combinations, or APCs. So what do you call them? What do you call your treatments? Put it in the chat, please. Same thing. Point formulas, point prescriptions, a big one. Yeah. But as I said, before COVID, I've basically been to most countries and learnt a bit about the acupuncture, Chinese medicine, point protocols. Thank you. The colleges and universities, what you teach. So I've got a little bit of a sense of the language that's used in different countries, but I always like to learn more. I don't want to think that I know it all, because I really don't. Point prescriptions, protocols, yeah, acupuncture point combinations. It's funny, people will come up to me. We had our Australian acupuncture conference in May this year, and I had a number of people come up to me and go, "Hey, you're the point combo dude," because they'd forgotten my name, but they remembered me for being the point combo dude. I mean, how classic is that? I don't call them anything. Yeah. Protocols, thank you. That's the sort of thing, yeah. Now, how do you construct your point prescription, your point formula or treatment? Like, how do you put your points together? Like, is there a structure? What's based on diagnosis? Yep. Anyone else? Based on tongue, face, point location, case history, balance method, yeah. Yeah, with the balance method is one that's become a lot more prolific over the last few years in Australia, certainly. Tongue and pulse, patient's general constitution, super. Yep, intuition. Yeah, we talk about that later. Kiko, master tongue, yep. Diagnosis, pattern discrimination, exam, yep. Yeah. Thank you. As I said, for the first few years, I used what I was taught, almost what I was told to use. You'd present a group of points in student clinic, for example. If I'm the student and I present to my supervisor, I'll say, this is the patient, these are the signs and symptoms, this is my diagnosis, and these are the points I want to use. And they'll go, yep, or no, change this, change that. And that's what I would use. And I learned that was kind of the structure. And then you buy textbooks, Giovanni's Foundations book was good in terms of giving you point prescriptions for different diagnoses. So again, you kind of go, well, Giovanni says to do this, so I'll do this. But I think that's a good way to start, but it's ultimately flawed because a book can't really present your patient to you properly, if that makes sense. Yeah. based on which points are open. I noticed a couple of things here I didn't know about. Miriam Lee's 10-point combo. I've not heard of that before. Thank you for sharing. Yep, kinesiology. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. All right. So basically, I've got a number of different questions we're going to talk about, as I said before the first break. But again, there's a lot more. And primarily, again, it's in that point combination book that I mentioned. I have a free 1.5 hour acupuncture point combination video. I think it might be, if you look up my bio on eLotus, it might be sitting there as a freebie. I'll check with Donna actually about that, but I also have it on my computer. So if you email me, and I'll have the email address for you a little bit later on, you can also email me and I can send you the video and handouts for it, because this is a short snapshot of something that's quite a bit bigger. But again, if you really want the full picture, then it's this big bopper of a book that gives you more information. So in terms of the structure of each of the point combinations you're going to come across throughout today and all my other workshops that I ever do, is there's a kind of a structure. And so one of the most obvious questions that I get asked is, what's the average number of needles that are used in the APC? It typically has between 8 to 16 needles on average. And I say needles because if I say points, people go, is that unilateral or bilateral? So it's the total number of needles used in the APC. Each APC is bilateral needling unless it actually states it in the slide. So if it doesn't have anything written after the point, then it's bilateral. Obviously, if I use Ren points or dew points or some extra points like yin tang, there's actually only one of them, isn't there? So they're not bilateral, but there's still only one needle. But otherwise, unless it says left side only or right side only, it is 2 needles per point. So again, to make sure you get that, if I have large intestine 4 in the slides, then it will be 2 needles unless stated otherwise. So it's the total number of needles used in the body. And that's how the point combinations are structured. For me, the point combinations are structured around not just what I want, but lots of what's in books and websites from workshops I've attended. Ultimately, the size of the point combination is on me, though, in the end. It's about the length of which I'd most like to see personally. I think that's fair. 30 years of clinical experience allows me the confidence to build something of that design. If you use less than 8, take some points away. If you use more than 16, add some more needles. There's no right or wrong. You know, I've got a friend in Israel that uses 1 needle, and it's not the same needle per patient. It's different needles, but it's only the 1 point and 1 needle. So if it is large intestine 4, then he actually chooses 1 large intestine 4. Might be for, say, headaches, for example, but just the 1 needle. And then I've got acupuncturists that I know that there's one that lives just down the road from me, and she might use 30, 40, 50 needles. Gets great results. So my mate in Israel, the awesome acupuncturist up the road from me, have a huge difference in the number of needles they use, but no less effective. For me personally, I use between 8 to 16 needles. I think that if you do less than 8, you may not be quite doing enough depending on your structure. Not discounting those that do it and do it successfully. That's just my opinion personally as an acupuncturist. But if you use less than 8 and you get great results, good on you. I use probably not many more than 16 because I think sometimes maybe you're starting to give the body too much information or you're overloading too much power possibly. But again, if you use more than 16 and you get great results, great. but the design of the point combinations throughout today are between that sort of 8 to 16. How do I design the point combinations? Basically, you'll see a structure where you'll see the location of the needle on the left-hand side, and it'll say head, face, and neck, if there's any points there. Front of trunk, points. Back of trunk, points. Arms and legs, points. Legs and feet, points. And the total number of needles used at the bottom. And they're structured, set out, because I don't like stacking needles all in one area. I find that that could compromise the overall effect of the treatment. Sometimes you don't get a choice. I had a patient once with a pretty advanced stage MS, and she was confined to a wheelchair through the day. And so when I came to treat her at her home, I could only really get to her legs, and her legs were really swollen. And I got good results, but I kept running into stagnations in her legs, which is where the needles were, but also on her trunk. She wouldn't let me put needles in her trunk. It was what's the word I'm looking for? She was had a lot of fluid, and so she was overweight, and she was self-conscious, is the word, of me poking around on her tummy. So she said, you can put needles in my legs and feet, but that's it. And so I kept kind of feeling like I was getting results, but that maybe it was a little bit less than what it could have been, because I was stuck with this limitation. I'm not sure why she didn't let me put needles in her arms and in her head anymore. I've completely forgotten as to why she wouldn't let me, but literally it was legs only, legs and feet only. So we got great results, but it was still slower than I would have liked to have seen. So for me, I felt like there was that limitation because of the stagnation through her diami and through her abdomen, hips, thighs, that sort of issue. So for me, I like to put points sensibly scattered throughout the body in general for any patient, because I don't always know where all the stagnations are. And it creates that zing where energy is constantly being zapped in different spots of the body. It's like if you do all your needles in one spot and you expect them to go everywhere in the body, they might be able to do that. But if you picture that you get in your car and you start driving the car, you start using up petrol or gas in your car, don't you, when you turn it on? And if it's too far before the next petrol or gas station, you might run out of fuel. Like that episode in Seinfeld when Kramer was running out of petrol and he kept going until he ran out. It was absolutely hysterically funny. And that's the issue, I feel. If we put too many needles all in one spot, the chi has to go everywhere in the body and back there again. What if it's like a car that runs out of petrol before it gets back? If we have regular zaps of energy throughout the body, it's regular stops for filling up for petrol, so you never run out. It's a constant zing of energy, helping to keep the energy moving through the body. Next question, do you tonify, sedate, or regulate the needles? It's another common question asked on me. I don't typically do that. I used to. We were taught, not so much anymore in Australia, but it used to be really traditional, thicker needles, much more stimulation. You know, if this is my needle, it's a thicker needle, and you really work the needle in the body until the patient's squirming. Now, that's not a bad way of doing acupuncture. It's the way I did acupuncture for a lot of years. I don't do it that way anymore. I don't feel like that you need to do that personally to get the results. I mean, I've seen some people not even touch the body with a needle, like more Japanese style, where if that's the point, the needle is actually, I don't know if you can see that, it's actually not even on the skin. It's above the skin, and it activates the chi at the point, and sometimes it travels. I had a gentleman with a gold needle that does Japanese style acupuncture in Brisbane, and he held it over lung 1, and the whole of the lung channel lit up. And he didn't even touch me with it, let alone put the needle into my skin. So I know that there's power that can be generated through not having to have to really work the needle to get the chi. So for me, I put the needles in, put them to about the depth where I expect that sort of chi pocket to be. So for some points, it's not very deep at all. For other points, you've got to go deeper. Gallbladder 30 and the bum, you know, that needle's got to go in a little bit of a ways. Whereas a point like, say, lung 11, it's only going to go just into the skin. So knowing sort of the depths, I put the needle in. I use guide tubes. So I tap the needle, move the guide tube, push it to the depth, leave it. So I don't twist them clockwise or anti-clockwise, lift or thrust certain ways, because the point combination as a combination creates the effect. So I do a point combination to tonify or a point combination to sedate, rather than actually telling the needle what to do by manipulating the needle. What order do I needle the points? I don't worry too much about that unless it's 8 extraordinary vessels, in which case I do care. In that instance, I do the opening points, then the couple points, then at least 1 point on the vessel, and then any non-vessel points, and then kind of reverse it coming out. But really, in general, the points go in as they go in. I do often leave the feet and the face till last. It's more sort of, I guess, hygienic, in that if I do the feet last, then I can just go off and wash my hands. It's, you know, most patients don't really care if you needle their feet and then you needle their face, but there is a bit of a hygienic thing there, I guess. So multiple washing of the hands in one sequence of needle insertion seems a bit silly. So it's also about, I guess, common sense in that regard. And the points on the feet often hurt more than everywhere else too. So I leave the hurty points till the end. And that's, I don't ever go into a treatment thinking these points are going to hurt, but I am aware of which ones do hurt more than others. And I leave those ones till the end just in case they do. If I put the needles that are more likely to hurt in at the start and they hurt, a patient often stays a bit clamped up, like, oh my God, this one's going to hurt. Oh, this one's going to hurt. Oh, it didn't hurt. Oh, the next one might. Oh, it didn't. Oh, the next one did hurt. Ow. And so they're kind of on edge throughout the whole thing. So I put the nice ones in first and leave the ones that are more likely to hurt till the end. And people are kind of funny about needles in their face and in their head, that you're going to needle into their brain or something. So again, explanation of what you're doing and the patient feeling a little bit less edgy, again, if they're the last ones you do. So why does it matter about this whole conversation anyway? You know, why am I spending this first hour on numerology on something that isn't even numerology? So, I mean, I think you get a sense of why it matters already, but patients are complex. So you need to really have a good handle on the treatments that you're doing, because not all patients are easy to work out. And even the ones that are pretty simple to work out still have probably quite a lot of complexity about how they live their life, what's happening in their body that you're not even aware of. And so for me, trying to make a patient fit a page in a textbook is problematic. So I think that you need to really go into every treatment with an idea that you're going to build the treatment as they talk to you. The structure comes into your brain as they're talking to you. We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. Patients don't often fit into an easy diagnosis, and that might affect your ability to, as I said, use a page in Giovanni because your patient's spleen chi deficient. Great, well, there's the pages in Giovanni on spleen chi deficiency, but Is it perfect fit? Probably not, because maybe they're not completely spleen chi deficient. So what do you do then? Oh, look, it doesn't quite fit what Giovanni says and what my patient is. What do I do? Do you just go, oh, well, it's close enough? And you know what? It might be close enough. And you probably still get good results, especially with your intent and your patient's desire to want to get better, hopefully. You'll probably still get good results, but really you should try and be the best, give the best possible treatment you can. And so what do you do? How do you choose the points when patients are complex? Again, like what happens if they're so complex that you've got all these different targets that you're trying to aim at? Oh, they've got this up here and this up here and this down here and this down here. It's all very overwhelming. How do I tackle that? If you've got a really good understanding of the points that work together as teams, then you are able to tackle a lot more conditions with that understanding. And so that's, for me, why it really matters that you look at the treatments that you're doing, looking at the combination of points. You sit down now, hopefully over this next period of time, and you, in a free moment, you look, okay, this is what I did for my patient. These are the different points. Where were they located on the body? Do they all work together? Are there some isolated ones, kind of a bit random? Looking at that process. How do they work? So the design of the point combinations might be to make a particular point or a series of points work stronger, better, or faster. So you might be, patient's got a headache, and so you are using, say, large intestine 4 because it's a really good point for all headaches. But maybe you can make it work stronger, better, faster by giving it some other points to help it be more effective. You might want to enhance one particular function of a point to cancel, reduce its other functions. Spleen 6 is a great example. It does so many different things. It tonifies yin, but it also tonifies qi. It reduces damp accumulation or moves the damp accumulation. So these can be very different things. If you want to tonify yin and you're telling spleen 6 to tonify yin, but don't worry about damp today, or don't worry about qi today, then you might need to, again, put other points with it to tell it what to do. So you might want to tell it to tonify yin. So you say to spleen 6, you're going to tonify yin today, so I'm going to put kidney 6 with you. I'm going to put heart 6 with you, because they're called a 3 yin 6s combination. Spleen 6, heart 6, kidney 6. 3 yin 6s. That those other points are saying, spleen 6, you're doing yin today. Whereas you might say, no, I want spleen 6 to do transforming and transporting damp. So you might say, I'm going to do spleen 3, spleen 6, spleen 9, ren 5, ren 9. Spleen 6 today, you're going to do damp. So that's kind of how that works. Or each point in the point combination works on different aspects of a patient's illness. So in that case, maybe you're working on damp heat, in which case some points do damp, some points do heat, but collectively they do the damp heat together. So some points will do damp and heat together, but some will do them separately. And incorporating local points directly around the condition, I'm a big fan of that. Different systems of needle construction don't necessarily use local points. Again, if it gets good results, then I'm not questioning it. I personally like doing local points as much as I can. Doing points at a distance or distal to are good, and then points nearby. So a good example of that is gallbladder 20 at the back of the neck to treat all of the sense organs. It's not right on top of the sense organs, but it's adjacent to and works. And then again, sensible scattering of needles. Where am I putting the points? Why am I putting the points there? Is it sensible? Do I treat the person or the disease? I treat the person, not the disease. The disease does not walk into my clinic. The person walks into my clinic. So if my patient is called David, then David walks into my clinic. His disease, which might be insomnia doesn't walk into my clinic, David does. David may have insomnia, and I make a note of that in my file. I'm working on insomnia. What type of insomnia is it? Tease it all out, learn more about it. Then you get your diagnosis. That gives you the ability to construct a treatment, but you're still treating David. You're not treating insomnia. It's like, yeah, I think that makes sense. So that for me is always the thing that's important, is you're not designing a treatment around a disease label. You're treating the patient, not the disease. You should always treat the patient as themselves, because the disease does not define them. Quick example of that is a few years ago. This is actually quite a few years ago now, before COVID. And I was at a Barbie. There we go, another bit of Aussie slang, a Barbie. At a Barbie with my mates, having a few stubbies, wearing my thongs. And I'm a fire archetype, so I like meeting new people. So I met this lady. She was about 45 years old. And, you know, this is again before COVID. So you go up, you shake their hand. And you go, how you going, mate? What's your name? My name's David. And they'll say their name. So I can't even remember what her name was anymore, but we'll just say, you know, Sue. And so, hi, my name's David. What's your name? Oh, I'm Sue. How are you? Because what are the main things that you talk about to someone the first time you see them? You ask how they are. And then you probably talk about, you know, what do you do for a living? So the first thing I said was, how are you, Sue? Because I say their name back to them, because that's another way of me remembering their name. Although, as I said, I've forgotten her name now. Bless. She said, well, let me tell you, Dave. And she said, I've got heartburn, and I didn't bring my heartburn medication with me. And I got this headache that's across the front of my head. And I didn't bring my sunnies with me today. And so I've got these really sore eyes, and it's a really bright day. And I'm sitting here listening to her list of complaints, desperately figuring out how to escape the conversation. How do I get out of here? And, you know, slowly stepping further and further away. Oh, you know, I'll just go get myself another beer. I'll be right back. And then no intention of going back, because Sue was not Sue, was she? Sue was her diseases. She's defined as her diseases. Sue's so used to talking about her diseases. Sue doesn't talk about Sue anymore. She talks about disease. Now, we don't want that, because how hard is it to treat a person that's defined by their disease? It's almost like Sue came up and said, you know, I said, hi, I'm David. What's your name? Oh, I'm heartburn. Oh, okay. Hi, heartburn. How are you? You know, like that's the issue that we have if people start to label themselves with the disease that they've been given by their general practitioner. So please don't do that, or I would recommend you not doing that. Do I use a common diagnostic method? Yes, I do. We teach Zhang Fu pattern differentiation in Australia. That's what I was taught. That's what I use. But I learnt over the years different diagnostic ways. And so I do use 5-element diagnosis sometimes, and various other ones. I also use the overall presentation. So I don't put my clients back to back, because I don't have to. So I leave gaps for me to recharge in case my patient goes a little bit over time. So, and I work from home. So the patient leaves and I can hear patients arrive. We're on a quiet little cul-de-sac. So I hear their car pull up often. So I walk out and greet them at the front door. I walk out the front door and I watch them walk up the driveway. So my diagnostic process in terms of structuring treatments all start from the moment I see them get out of the car, walk up into my clinic, meet me, sit down, have our clinical chat, all this process is me building my acupuncture point combination. And then also they get up on the table, tongue pulse, that sort of thing. I'm in their aura, I'm in their chi dynamic. And that also forms part of the diagnosis and treatment. So everything from the moment I see them to the last needle going in is a process to how the point combination is structured for me. I do consider 5 elements. I do consider musculoskeletal. So again, I'll have my favorites for different body parts, but I'll still do a little bit of palpation and so on to decide if they're still the best points. But I have a design in mind, but that's still treating the disease, not the person. So it's a design in mind that is adaptable based on the patient. 6 divisions is a consideration sometimes, so is 4 levels. I also love the 8 extras as diagnostic, but also in terms of treatment. So it's used on occasion as well. Do I use my intuition or my gut? I use my heart. My last name's Hartman. I don't know if that's corny, but I use my heart. That's where I get my information. It's my Shen. You want to call it your gut, your heart, your brain, your intuition, whatever you call it. I do think that intuition is important. I am a 22-4 in ruling number numerology, and 22-4s are very intuitive anyway as one of their strengths. So I think I've got that just anyway, and I've developed it further. But I also think that 30 years of clinical experience could factor into why I'm coming up with the ideas I'm coming up with, and maybe that has nothing to do with intuition at all, but just knowledge base. So I think it's both. I think that the knowledge is part of that intuition, and I think intuition in its own right is a separate thing. So I build my acupuncture point combinations on both of those things. Do I use intention? Some of you mentioned that in the chat earlier as well. Same with intuition. Yes, intention is good. Part of it is that the patient comes in because patients don't book with me online. There is no online booking system for me. I don't see a lot of patients in a week because I don't need to and I don't want to. My whole week is structured around lots of different things in acupuncture. A lot of it is building these workshops, presenting these workshops, treating patients. It's a whole thing. So patients have to phone me to make a booking, and that's deliberate because I want to learn more about them in the phone call to decide if I'm a suitable practitioner for them, because I don't need to take every patient. I can be selective. I've got a whole bunch of acupuncturists around me with different skill sets. If they're really musculoskeletal based and I think it's not the best thing for me, I've got a musculoskeletal lady up the road I can use. If it's, say, fertility, women's health, I've got people down the road that can take care of that. I treat mental health, emotional turmoil. That's what I'm interested in. So I'm selective in what I treat. So patients cannot just book online for me. They turn up. I have no idea what it is that they want treated. So they have to phone me before they can book with me. And so from the minute that I think, yes, I can do something for them, I expect results. I expect that I will get results, and that's intention. And I'm selling that to my patient through the phone call from the moment they see me. They get this feeling, David knows what he's talking about. He's going to help me. And what happens is they actually help themselves by thinking that, don't they? What do? I know what I'm doing. I know the points I need to use. I expect results. But in the end, the patient heals themselves. I don't heal them. They might think that I'm healing them. And in some ways, I guess, depending on the angle you look at, I am, but their body heals themselves. I just give their body the best chance to heal. So the intention is everything from that initial phone call to taking the patient on, seeing them, treating them. The patient buys into that. I explain to my patient what I'm doing. I don't just put the needles in and then toddle out of the room. You know, I might leave them to relax for a while, or I might not. We might chat. Depends on what the patient wants. Because I don't have multiple rooms going at once, I don't need to be running off to another patient. So I explain what I'm doing, and then they visualize it. And the minute they visualize my explanation, what's the body doing? It's starting to do that. So that's the process. When constructing your point combination, how do the acupuncture points come to you? And I've talked about this already. From the second I see them, main complaint gives me points. I picture it like I've got 3 daughters. Now, one of them in particular likes doing jigsaw puzzles with me. And this is something really fascinating that I've kind of looked at over the years. When a point, an acupuncture point comes to me, it pops up in my head almost like a singular jigsaw puzzle piece. And it'll be like, say, large intestine 4, LI4 is on the little jigsaw puzzle piece. That might be, I see them walking up the driveway and they're like, oh, you know, touching their head maybe. And I go, oh, I wonder whether they've got a headache. Oh, large intestine 4, bing, just pops up into my head. And then I might say to them, you know, how are you going today? I probably already know a bit about them because of the phone call, of course. You got a bit of a headache today? Oh, I do. Yeah, yeah. So little jigsaw puzzle pieces start forming in my head. Then they might mention something else, another jigsaw puzzle piece forms. And they're just all sort of floating around in my head and above my head in the hun. And then the more that they talk and the more I watch the non-verbals, the body language, the jigsaw puzzle pieces start merging. They might go to merge and they bump. They don't quite fit, like in a jigsaw puzzle piece where they don't fit. So they bump off. One of them goes away. Other ones merge and you start to build a picture, which becomes the completed jigsaw puzzle. So by the time that last needle is in the patient, that's the completed jigsaw puzzle for that patient at that point in time. Then they leave as themselves. They come back again the next time. Maybe that's not the perfect jigsaw puzzle for them anymore. So it adapts. That's how it works for me. Little jigsaw puzzle pieces merging. It's fascinating. I love it. I love what my brain does. I love my brain. Is there anything else about the point combinations that you should know? As I said, just a bit of a summary. I use 8 to 16 needles personally. Almost always use bilateral needling. I don't tend to flip my patients. The point combinations throughout the slides today have front and back options. Because I don't flip my patients usually, then some of those needles won't be in my actual patient for that day. But again, I'm not designing the point combinations perfectly for me. You know, there's 150 odd people here. You all design your treatments a bit different. So I'm giving you a suggestion. And so you take it and you adapt it to fit you. And I adapt it to fit me. And one of the things that I don't do is flip my patients in a treatment very often. So I'm already going to adapt the point combinations throughout today to suit me perfectly. And the last thing that happens is the last needle goes in and then the time starts, because it's the collective of needles giving the body the information. And then they usually stay in around 20 to 30 minutes. That decision is based again on the patient at that point in time. So it's not a rule exclusively, even for the same patient. It might change from treatment to treatment. Sometimes it's geared around time. They might only have a certain amount of time before they have to leave, whatever. But ideally, it's based on the point combination cooking away until we're ready. Would you rather be a point combination chef or a cook? The chef designs their own meals. It's free thinking. So an APC chef designs their own point combinations. That's obviously what I am now. That's what I think that as many of you as possible will hopefully be doing. There's no reason why you can't still be a good acupuncturist if you're a cook as well. Cooks can still make very good meals, but they follow a recipe. So these are the ingredients. This produces the end result. It doesn't mean that it's not still brilliant, but you didn't really think it through necessarily. So was it the best treatment you could have done? Maybe, maybe not. So it's up to you how you do it. I'm just giving you, kind of like a little prompt. Maybe look at what you do and see if it's the best you could be doing. So obviously I do the free thinking, but I didn't for the first few years of practice, as already mentioned. So I'm going to give you an APC example. Then I'm going to merge the thoughts with a herbal formula, and then we'll have our first break. During the break, I'll have a little look at the questions that people have in the chat and the Q&A. And if there's anything I really want to talk about, we'll talk about it either after the break or a little bit later on. So this one has 17 needles used all up. You'll see it's got points on the head. It's for liver qi stagnation stress. Quite a common diagnosis. So we've got do 20 at the top of the head, gallbladder 20 at the back of the neck. We've got points on the front of the trunk, liver 14, kidney 26. You can see the reasoning on the sides there. Do 20 to calm the shen, help to calm the stress down. Gallbladder 20 helps to move the qi. It's a shen calming point as well. We've got it being a liver qi stagnation, so we want to do liver points. So we've got front mu of liver, we've got back shu of liver, yuan source point of liver. Front mu's best point on the trunk to treat an organ. Back shu's best point on the back of the trunk to treat the organ. Yuan source points are the best point on the channel to treat the organ. So knowing those ones as a blanket rule for any organ is quite handy. We've got the kidney spirit gate point for wood. The wood element organs are liver and gallbladder. We've got qi movers, pericardium 6, gallbladder 34, liver 3. Kind of the 3 best qi movers in the whole body. Peri 6, gallbladder 34, liver 3. We've got the opening the 4 gates. Very good shen, calming, stress relieving, and qi moving combination. And that's large intestine 4 and liver 3 as a combo. Lots of good connections we'll talk about in a minute. 17 needles, probably on the high end for me. I'm not flipping them anyway. So straight away I can remove some. If they're face up, I'm not going to do bladder 18. And I might not even do gallbladder 20, although they can be on their back, tilt their head, you needle flat, they come back, tilt their head, you needle flat, they come back, you check, are you okay? Yes, don't move your head around too much. I won't. As long as they're relaxed and don't get too stressed about those needles, then they can be done face up or just leave them out. Or they're face down, it means I don't do the front ones. You can still get to liver 3 face down. You just prop the ankles with bolsters so you can still get to liver 3. But otherwise, yeah, that will reduce the number of needles for me. So let's have a look. The points are sensibly scattered around the body. So that's a tick for me. An acceptable number of needles, pretty much. It's a range of different points on different channels. I'm a fan of that if they're working together as a team. And there's a range of points on the same channels, but different spots in the body. So if we look at the points again and the connections, we have gallbladder 20 on the neck, gallbladder 34 on the legs. Same channel though. Liver 3, liver 14 on the feet and on the trunk. They're going in different directions as well. Gallbladder channel energy down, liver channel energy going up. So again, these relationships, 4 gates, and do 20 for calming the shen, decreasing stress, moving the qi. We've got head, hands, feet. Front mu, back shu, yuan source, we talked about. We've got yin-yang partners. Liver and gallbladder are yin-yang partners. They're connected. And we've got points on both those channels. We've got yin-yin partners. The diagnosis was liver qi stagnation. We had liver. What's its yin partner? Pericardium. So we have liver as the main organ, we've got its yang partner, the gallbladder, and we've got its yin partner, the pericardium. We've got best chi movers, because that's the main diagnosis, liver 3, peri 6, gallbladder 34. And then we've got a double wood whammy in liver 14 and kidney 26 on the chest, close to one another. So you can see this structure, why it's designed that way. Now, I've got a quick question for you as well. Have you ever structured an acupuncture treatment in a manner similar to a Chinese herbal formula? If you don't know what I'm saying, you don't need to answer. But have you ever constructed an acupuncture treatment in a manner similar to Chinese herbal formulas? Yes or no in the chat. Yes, yes, no. Some of you, I just looked at some of the chat. I thought you didn't flip people. Good one. Well, anyway, you know the answer now. No, yes, absolutely, no. Some people probably haven't even given it much of a thought. And some of you probably don't do herbs and never taught herbs. So, never were taught herbs. So it doesn't matter if you said no or yes or never thought about it. Cool. Thank you for sharing. Those of you that typed in, appreciate that. I'm going to use a herbal formula to give you an example of what I mean. So hundreds and hundreds of different formulas out there. I just decided to use this one because it doesn't have all that many herbs, so it's easier to explain. Huang Lian Jie Du Tang. I do apologize for my Aussie slang style of pinyin pronunciation. It's not perfect. I know that. What does it do? It's the 3 yellows formula, and it clears heat, purges fire, eliminates toxins from the entire sanjiao. So all your organs, essentially, or essentially any organ that currently has too much heat or too much fire or is toxic. To explain the process, you typically look at Chinese herbal formulas as being structured according to Jun Chen Zuo Shi, which is a chief herb, a deputy herb, an assistant herb, and an envoy herb, or different words that you might use to describe it. What is it quickly? The Jun is the chief or monarch. It's the main complaint. You've chosen a herb for the formula that treats the main complaint that the patient has. In the same way that their main complaint might be headaches, and you've decided a large intestine 4 is your main point, it would be the chief herb. The Chen is the deputy or minister or adjuvant, and basically it aids the chief herb to treat the main complaint. It can possibly treat other signs and symptoms as well as or instead, and it can be used to reduce toxicity of the chief herb. So some herbs that are the chief herb can be quite overwhelming on the body and have some toxicity, in which case you might have other herbs being used to reduce that from toxicity so you don't get sick. You have the Zuo or assistant. It's assisting the chief again, and probably the deputy, or it doesn't help the chief but helps the deputy. It also is very good at reducing toxicity, and it can actually work separate or opposite to the chief herb, but not going off randomly doing its own thing, but kind of going off and doing this thing as a support still. So it's coming back and helping the chief herb ultimately anyway. And then there's the envoy, guide, or messenger. It's the herb that tells basically kind of where you need to go and helps to harmonize all the other herbs in the formula. So a very common guiding herb is licorice or honeyed licorice. It's quite common. That's not in this formula, but is one of the ones that's very good. So you can see the three yellows. Yellow is Huang, if you didn't know. And then they basically work on upper, middle, and lower parts of the jiaos. So Huang Lian is in the middle, liver, gallbladder, stomach, spleen primarily. Huang Qin is the upper, lungs, heart, pericardium. Huang Bai or Huang Bo is lower jiao, kidneys, urinary bladder, small and large intestines. And then you've got the envoy herb, which I think is gardenia fruit, clears heat in the sanjiao. So collectively sort of working with all of them. And you can see what it's doing. Don't need to go into detail. This is not a herbal formula workshop, but you can see it's got a structure. It's got the dosages, the ranks, what it does, overall what the formula is treating in terms of the actions and the indications. So it's telling you what's going on, but how would you do that, say, with acupuncture point combinations? So this is a bit of a hypothetical. So we need a chief herb, and that in this case is going to be a point or points. In this case, I've figured in this formula of points, probably the chiefs would be Sanjiao 5 and Du 14, clearing heat in the whole of the Sanjiao. Sanjiao 5 makes sense. It's on the Sanjiao channel. We're using the Sanjiao organ, and it's a heat clearer. So it makes sense that it's the chief, and Du 14 is the heat regulator special in the whole body. So it probably logically could also be a chief. Then we're looking at deputies. In this case, we're trying to look at the upper, middle, lower jiaos. So we've got, say, gallbladder 24 for heat in the middle jiao, along with Ren 12. We've got upper jiao, say, Du 12. And then we've got lower jiao with, say, something like Du 4. Du 4 is an interesting one. I think a lot of people recognize it as being very good for tonifying heat deficiency or yang deficiency, but I think a lot of people don't realize it's actually a heat clearer as well. So in this case, it's going to be a heat clearer. We've got the assistants working on slightly different aspects of it, more that toxic heat. And then we've got the envoys, large intestine 11 and Gen, that's the one at the tip of the ears. So you fold the ears forward and then you prick the top of the ears and just get a drop of blood out. Or you can actually just needle it, leave the needle in, and then remove at the end of the treatment. So that's kind of how it works. 15 needles all up. It has front and back, so it's probably not perfect for something I would personally do as a treatment. I'd probably adjust that slightly, but that's kind of how you're looking at doing. It's showing you how the point combination is built. Now, if you don't do herbs, it doesn't matter, but it's kind of giving you a structure. For me, it's been going for so many decades now. It's the jigsaw puzzle piece example I gave earlier. That's me formulating it into a combination. This is showing you a different structure. So hopefully that made sense, basically what the slide is saying. I think that having a good point combination understanding is just as important as herbal formulas. The reality is that most people will not grab a collection of individual herbs and say, here, take all them together. You know, it's like you are doing formulas that are working perfect. You might adjust the formula slightly, and that's what you do with acupuncture as well. I don't think individual needles doing random things is necessarily the best outcome. It's still probably going to work, but might not be quite as effective. All of the points throughout today and across all of the workshops will be often a collection of some of these. Some of them won't be in any of the point combinations today, but might be in a lot more tomorrow or a lot more in next month. But it's often choosing, say, a front mu collecting, a back shu transporting, a yuan source. They've already been mentioned in the example I gave earlier. Orrery points are of the clock or on the clock. They are the element on the element. So it's a wood point on a wood channel, fire on fire, so fire point on a fire channel, earth on earth, metal on metal, water on water. A water on water point would be kidney 10. It's the water point on the water channel. And so if you've got a kidney issue or a water element issue, you could use an orrery point. Lower Herse uniting points are 6 points on the legs that treat the yang organs. Very good at treating whatever's wrong with the yang organ. Kidney spirit gate points are the points on the chest. I really like them. Not everyone uses them for what I'm going to be talking about throughout today, but I like them for treating the element that they're associated with. I've got a little 20-slide PowerPoint handout on kidney spirit gate that runs through a couple of slides per point. So kidney 22 up to kidney 27, just a few little slides on each point. So if you don't know much about the kidney spirit gate and you'd like to know more about that, then if you email me, and I'll put the email in on the chat a little bit later, and they're in the slides later on as well, if you don't know much about them. The outer bladder channel spirit points are the outer pathway of the urinary bladder channel, and there's 5 of them for the 5 main yin organs. The pericardium misses out. I still think that bladder 43, which is the point out from the pericardium back shoe point, still has a lot of value for your spirit. And I think that some of the outer bladder points for the yang organs have value as well, but they're not typically considered part of the outer bladder spirit points. So bladder 42, for example, for your Po is one of the 5. So if they're part of value in the point combinations, they'll be mentioned. And then obviously there's other miscellaneous points that we're going to talk about as well. There's always a reasoning for why the point was selected along the side. Okay. So we're basically at our first break. So what I'm going to do is prepare for the next section. While we have our little break, I'll also jump in and look at the chat and see whether there's anything that I need to urgently answer. Otherwise, I will look at it a little bit later on. So if we could have, what is it now? 3:30. Well, what is that time for you? LA time, it's 10:36.
Yep.
Thank you, Sam. So 10:50.
Okay.
If we can be back again. So you've got about 13 minutes now. Grab yourself a coffee or whatever, stretch your legs, and we'll be back again. So please be back in 13 minutes or 10:50 LA time. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Recording stopped.